Okay, I'm going to actually have two presentations. The first one, I'm going to talk about the definitions of staging as described by the layout design SIG, and we'll go through a few of their um, uh, information subjects, and then we'll go over to my railroad, and I'll talk about why I'm doing staging a particular way. And after I'm finished, John Hansky will come in with his, and he's got a good explanation of his thought processes and some of his staging ideas. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here if I can. And I'll go to here. Uh, sure. And I thought I had this all figured out. Some reason. And you never know what's going to happen with this Zoom stuff. Do you see the slide or not?
No.
No, okay.
Oh, I got one more click to go. You got to
Uh,
actually click share again.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
There. Yes.
I forgot about that one. Okay, let me get this up here. All right, staging yards. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of staging yards. And the first place I went to for some information was a layout design SIG. And I guess I got to click this arrow. Definition of layouts. Definition from layout design SIG. Staging yards is preparing and storing trains off the visible portion of the layout until they are needed. And they describe three different types: double-ended, stub-ended, and serial. And we'll talk a little bit about those as we go through all of our presentations. So location of staging, they describe point to loop or loop to loop, basically a loop at each end of the railroad. Double-ended staging yards, continuous loop, that'd be one big circle of a railroad. And helix used as serial staging. I guess you'd line up a whole bunch of trains in your helix and pull them out one at a time. Point to point and a fiddle yard. And I guess fiddle yard's something that came from UK, I believe. Anyone could chime in on a yes or no on that. But fiddle yard is another type of staging. Methods of operation. Trains once out and once per operating session, or the next train out, same direction. That would be something like a loop to end. Any train.
She ate up all of her food. She probably could use some more.
I beg your pardon? What are we eating?
All right.
Next, any train, same direction, or any train, alternate directions, or any train, any direction. So those are kind of methods of operation for staging. Staging yard ops. What happens when you actually are doing your operation sessions? You could have staging yard operation of hidden or exposed. Obviously, the layout design SIG folks must prefer the hidden. How do you do that? You put trains on or rolling stock on or off the railroad, and you might have them in a box, in a drawer, a rolling cassette, an elevator storage. I've seen all different kinds of things like that. The staging yard sends and receives staged trains and makes up new trains as the operation session goes along. And I do that on mine. A person works in a staging and other industries in the area. So that's a kind of a staging area too. So you can take the definition of staging and expand it to suit your particular railroad, whatever works. Staging configurations. This is the last slide on this part. basically three kinds of staging is a stub, a through staging, something like me in the middle of your railroad, and loop staging. Now I have all of these on mine. Um, I've got about 6 yards. I'm going to cover, I think, four of them. You can have single-ended stubs, like it shows on the left and the right, so they're kind of configured a little differently. Through staging, there again, they're configured a little differently, and the parallelogram yard is similar to the through staging. Okay, I think that's the last one I have of this. So we'll go to this guy. Now we'll talk about staging on my railroad, the Pacific Central and Eastern. And when I first started to design my railroad, I was very fortunate that I fell into a large group of folks in the Michigan, Indiana area that was doing ops. And so I was able to do a number of operation sessions before I even started building my railroad. And some of those op sessions had staging yards that were completely hidden. Some of them had staging yards that were exposed, and some of them had staging yards that were both staging and some sort of operations that took place in or near the staging yard, which I kind of opted for. So we'll go to my first yard that I'll talk about, and that's Wendover. Wendover yard is a loop style. The main line, if you can see my mouse on the lower left, the main line comes in on the lower left, goes around through the yard and goes back out again on the lower left. So that's a loop. And inside this loop are a number of storage tracks and sidings here, storage tracks here. The car card box for this is this bottom part right here. It's located right here on the fascia. And as you can see right now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 trains staged and 1 train to be classified. So, and then there's a pickup over here on the right-hand side. That is a box car that's an express box, and it's sitting right here on the siding by the station. Whoops, excuse me. Right, easy to click the mouse. So what really happens here, I'll explain more about this yard, and then you'll understand what happens in the other yards as well. So what really happens here is a number of trains are already staged. And those trains actually came in during the last op session. And I might mention at this point in time that I think there's 15 trains that are staged on the railroad ready to be operated. That's the good news. The bad news is they've been sitting here since the last op session of March 2020. So it's very sad that we haven't been able to move a railroad train in almost actually a year now. Anyway, what happens here is these trains that are at the bottom in this box, they are ready to go out. So the crew caller will call a crew up. He'll get his directions on how to operate a particular train. He'll go over to the yard. He'll pick up the train for either Randeville, Salt Lake, whatever he sees there, and coincides with his train instructions. And he'll take that train out after he's contacted this dispatcher and gets permission. In the meantime, this yard operator is classifying the train that's on the track that says, the card says to be classified. So that is, let's see here, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, it's this train right here with the flat at this end. That needs to be classified. So my operators at the yards are actually doing work besides sending out staged trains. The operator will take this train, classify it per the car cards. He'll pull a locomotive out of the engine facility, a caboose out of the engine facility, and put it on there and get that train ready to go to whatever the car cards indicate it needs to go. I have a few trains that are unit trains. This one right here with all the yellow box cars, that's a Produce Express. So it's sitting on this track. It's going to go to Provo in this case. So what else is going to happen? When this yard operator sends those trains out or classifies the one he has, in the meantime, he's going to start receiving trains from elsewhere on the railroad. And when he gets those trains into this yard, he will pull the waybills out and interface with, I have a freight agent involved with the railroad. So he interfaces with the freight agent. They will swap waybills, and he will put new waybills or pull waybills out of the train that comes in, put new waybills into those cars, and then classify it according to the waybills and create a new train. So that train may or may not go out during the op session based on the schedule. Usually that it will go out. And so what really happens here is that by the time we are done with an op session, we hope to, or we should see a number of trains that are already staged for the next op session. And maybe there's some classification that still needs to be done. And this happens at all of the freight yards on my railroad. So the desire here is that there's very, very little restaging that I need to do at the end of an op session before I can do the next one. And that's where my goal was. So many times I've gotten an email from someone that says, well, we've got to cancel the op session because I have not had the time to go down into the basement or the railroad room, wherever it's at, and restage for the next op session. And I think, that's too bad. And I know it happens. We're all got busy lives, but I wanted some way for me to not have to do the op session staging, and also create more work for the yard operators. You'll find that when you do, some of you guys are probably still building your railroad, but when you get into operations, you're going to find that you've got operators that just love this kind of work. And you've got other operators that want to say, no way, all I want to do is run a train from A to B or A to C and be done with that train. So you've got a lot of versatility that you need to probably think about with the crews that you're going to have coming over to your house. So let's just take a look at a next style of staging. Any questions here? Be happy to answer any. I don't hear any. Okay. All right. So the next big yard after Wendover is in the middle of my railroad, and that's Thomas A. Moore Yard. And in this yard, there's two types of staging, and we'll talk about both of them in here in a moment. The car card box for the yard itself is for the arrival and departure tracks. This is a main, and there's 1, 2, 3 arrival departure tracks. Behind there is a stub staging and a through staging. So both of those styles are employed on this yard. This guy back here is an escape track, and the one in the very back is for maintenance away. So here we see there's two trains sitting on the arrival depart, and this is at the beginning of the op session or at the end of the last op session. We see two trains sitting on the arrival departure track. And both of them, the cards say they are to be classified. So this yard operator has work to do from the last op session. He's going to classify these two trains, and he will classify them into either a westbound train or an eastbound train. This, like I said, this yard is in the middle of my railroad. So let's take a closer look at these two sections of staging area, this classification track here and this one over here. So here's what happens. Over on the west side, this is from the last op session after it was over. We only see one train sitting in the west class track, but it's already classified and it's going to Salt Lake. So the car cards are behind this particular tab. Again, the operator will go to the crew caller, who's usually Ron Christensen, by the way. He will give them the train operation, train instructions for this train. And the operator will go to the yard. The yard master here will put a locomotive, a caboose. I should have given you a picture of my engine facility. It's over here on the left. He'll put a locomotive, a caboose on there, and then that train can leave. He contacts the dispatcher before he goes. Normally, what's your name, John? John Hansky. John likes to dispatch, so he's been dispatcher on my railroad. That previous box I showed you would have been over here to the right for the AD tracks. This box is this one right here for the East class track. I'm sorry, West class track. By the way, these little pins or clamps or whatever you want to call these things, they serve two purposes. You can see a little white on top. That's actually the track identifier information. So this track here is track 7. Since it's the west, it's 1, 3, 5, 7, and the east is going to be 2, 4, 6, 8. So we know that this track or this train is sitting on track 7, ready to go out. So we go to the other side of this freight yard, and that's the east class track. And this employs the through type staging. And we see that there's 1, 2, 3 trains here. And then this one right here in the front is sitting on the AD track. So if we take a look at the east class yard box, here's 1, here's 2, and you'll see another tab right behind Garfield's tab. So that's this second train sitting back here. And so they were all classified and ready to go for the next op session after the previous, or for the next op session after the previous op session completed. Any questions there?
Yeah, I have one question. What's
Sure.
the average length of your train?
Average length of my trains are about 12 to 15 cars.
Well, these trains only have 4 or 3 cars.
Yeah, okay. Have you ever moved a train that only had 2 cars?
Okay.
I'm asking.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, this will fluctuate. Sometimes there will be 2 class tracks with parts of a single train. It all happens during the op session, and you really don't know how it's going to go. And let me explain why that's true. Is because of the way I work my waybills. Waybills are processed during the op session all the time during the op session. Waybills are processed. When a train comes to the end of the railroad, those waybills are pulled and new ones are put in. And that's where the yard guys work together with the freight agent. And that's how new trains are made up during the op session. So it's a continual situation of changing the waybills for the cars. So when a train gets to the end of the line, let me go back here since you asked the question. At the end of the line, this is the end of the line for my railroad. So this is Wendover. But some of these cars, like this one here where it says to be classified, some of those cars might be going to Los Angeles or San Francisco or whatever, further west of Wendover. Well, I can't send them there. But I don't want to spend time processing those waybills during the month between my op sessions. So I have the yard master in Wendover, for instance, pull those waybills out. He gives them to the freight agent, and the freight agent will give him eastbound waybills that are appropriate for the cars that are in his yard to be classified. That way he can make up a new train. And depending on where those waybills are going, the cars are going based on the waybills, that's how you will decide whether it's going to be going to Provo, Garfield, Salt Lake, or whatever, out of Wendover back again. So that's how we can send out a new train during the op session, or it could become a train towards the end of the operation session for the next op session. Did that kind of answer your question? I don't know who asked the question, so. All right, so back to the East Class Yard. We've got 3 trains sitting here, and someone mentioned that there was only 3 cars sitting here, and I think there's 4 on this other one, and that's this here. And another reason why there's probably so few here is Garfield only has a few industries, so we're not going to see a whole lot of train cars there. And I think the one behind here is Clearfield. So Garfield and Clearfield are right next to each other. They may pull these two sections out as a single train. It kind of depends on how the operator, or rather the yard master, wants to put them together and work with the crew caller. You see that. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you need to block the trains before you leave the yard?
Yes, all the trains should be blocked. What you don't see here are well, maybe you do. Right here in this box, there's a bunch of white face cards, and those are, I've got 2 styles for those. One of them is a train instructions, and the other one is a train build card. So the train instructions are actually over at the crew caller desk. And so he will give the operator or the train crew the train instructions that tells him how to operate that train from the time he picks it up to the time he's done. The train build cards will actually have the instructions for the yard guys on how to block the train, how to block the cars in their train when he builds it up and he's doing his classification. So let's say this train here is A105. Right here would be a build card that would be for train A105, for instance, and it will tell, okay, this train is going to go, when he classifies it into the class yard, he will then class it based and build it based on the blocking description on the build card. I think that was Doug that asked that.
No, that was me.
Okay, whoever me is. Okay, all right. So
It was Bob.
oh, okay. Anyway, that's kind of what's happening here. This in the previous picture of the whole of the yard. Here's the TA Moore car card box. Again, here's the 2 trains that are sitting on the arrival departure track. Here's the 2 cards or the car card box for this one. They're sitting right over here, and to the left here was for the west side. Again, here's our tabs. Here's our train build cards, a telephone to call the dispatcher, or he can call the yards. I have 8 telephones on the railroad, so we can keep communications there. John has telephones as well, so he may show that to you. I don't know. So let's go to the next yard. Here's the other end of the railroad. This is Provo. So what do we have in Provo for staging? We have a coal train sitting in the back here. That's going to be sitting on this track on the lower right of the box. And then there's 1, 2, 3 trains sitting here that are ready to go out from the last op session. And one's going to Moore Yard, one to Moose Flats, one to Wendover. It's going to Wendover. It's going all the way to the other end of the railroad. So these will have cars in them that have westbound waybills. Again, the yards at both ends pull the waybills and stick new ones in. There again is the phone for the yard master to call the dispatch. This guy right here is a layout of the yard. And so certain trains need to be staged on certain tracks, just like you would on any other kind of staging. This diagram right here will tell the yard guy where to stage those trains. So somewhere on here is a place that says stage the coal train on track, whatever it is, and that'll be right here on this part of the yard. We have industries. I didn't talk about that earlier, but we do have some industries for the yard guys to work as well. Here's a car card box for the industries that are over here on the right-hand side. And way over here is a car card box for the engine facility, which is here. Again, the when the trains are ready to go, 20 minutes by schedule, the yard operator will pull a locomotive and caboose and put them on this train and get them ready to go for the operator that's going to come over from the crew caller. It's all based on schedules. I think John will talk to you about schedules as well. All right, so that's Provo. Oh, by the way, this is another loop style staging where the trains come in from the right. They go around a loop through a little tunnel and they come out and into the staging yard. Or they can sit on a siding before they go around the loop. So we've got 3 types of staging already described here: stub, loop, and a through staging. All right, let's go to the next one. The next one, guy, and this was interesting because when I first started building my railroad, this was one of the first yards I put in that had any kind of activity. And I was going by the strict definition of hidden staging. So this whole area from the upper right all the way down to about here was covered by a mountain that going up. That's why this is kind of just one color here. The mountain started here on about the middle of the peninsula, went all the way down here, and there was a tunnel right here on the left. Oops, that isn't good. Sorry about that. My finger is really good on the mouse. The tunnel ended up down here. So this was all covered by a mountain. And these 3 tracks, this one, and this one, were underneath that mountain. And it was just a single line of track with 6 trains sitting on it. And it was hidden, and I hated it. So after all the work to build a mountain, that went into the trash can. We pulled it right off the railroad. And what we did instead was, I don't know if you can see this here. This track now has a crossover going from the left into the center track, and from the center track over to the 3rd track. And we now have 6 separate tracks. And then I added an additional line off of here, put a turntable in, and made this a working yard instead of a hidden yard. Again, there's an engine facility here, caboose track. So this is Ogden Yards, and it becomes a staging area. The Salt Lake portion is down here on the left. That's a stub yard. And now we can actually have transfer runs between Salt Lake and the Ogden tracks. We can do it through here, or we can come out here onto the main and back in this way. So what happens here is the yard operator, or sometimes there's 2 guys here, they will take these trains that come in or out, and they will work them just like they do in the other yards. And we have a turntable here that's big enough to turn a passenger car or the locomotives. Again, here's a unit train sitting back here at the Swift plant in Ogden, and it's going to go to, I think it runs to San Francisco. Of course, it ends up in Wendover because that's the farthest west on my railroad. So when it's time to run the Swift train, the operator will put a locomotive caboose on it. And what normally happens is the train will pull out, it'll back up in here and pick up a caboose. We can put a caboose right here for staging or for pickup. And then it's got a car card box right here at the end of the peninsula. And again, there's a train coming that's staged for Garfield. There's a train stage for Blair, and there's a train stage for Wendover. And that's these trains right here. The commuter train, I don't believe it has a set of cards. The one for Garfield is the one way down here on the left. It's sitting here with its car cards behind it with the waybills in it. So this yard saw a lot of activity at the last op session, but towards the end, the operator says, okay, I've got enough trains here to stage, and I'll just leave them there, and we call it end of the session, and they're all staged and ready to go out. I did not have to do any of this in between op sessions. So that was my goal, to prevent me from having to do this kind of stuff. Let the yard guy, you'll find that there are guys just love to do yard work, and that's the guys you want to put in these kind of situations. So I think that's the end of mine, and I will stop sharing unless someone has some questions.
At the Moore yard where you had the stub-ended staging tracks,
Yes.
are those for trains headed only in one direction or either direction?
We hope that those are in at the stub tracks and more. Those should be trains that are heading west, and there could be Salt Lake, Ogden. I've got a town called Randallville, and then Blair and Wendover. So there's a number of locations those trains can go to. And then the ones on the right in the feed through track or through track, those trains go to Garfield, Clearfield, Elton Junction, and Provo. And I think there's it's the National Guard Armory. So there's a number of places. Yeah, you don't see. I showed you the yards. You don't see the whole railroad, although I don't know whether you can see it behind me. There's a lot of railroad that is not shown on these few slides. So, but I don't know who asked that question.
Chuck, this is Rod. Do you use ground throws on all of your yards, or are they electric controls?
Okay, everything on the main line is electric, and everything in the yards is ground throw. And it's actually finger flick. That's the Pico style turnouts. So you just flick them with your finger and they move very easily. I didn't want to put the Caboose Industries, I think, is one of them that they sell that has the little turn thing you move back and forth to throw the turnout. Those take up a lot of room. They're so oversized, I didn't want to use them. So the yards use finger flick, and the main line is all electric. I don't know whether you can see this. Let me see if I really narrowed these pictures down.
Chuck, you might point out that that's an N-scale layout also.
Yeah, it is N scale. Okay, so thank you, John. You see this little white thing right here, and there's another one over here on the right. Here, wait a minute, let me get this up here. Am I sharing this?
No, we're still seeing you. Chuck.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. Let me go back to sharing. Sorry about that. Oh, I see it's a number of the operators are on. So Provo Yard would normally John Benecki runs that yard. Wendover, I saw Alan is on with us now. Alan Black is my Wendover guy. Paul Ewing is usually at the Moore Yard. But anyway, these little white guys right here is a fitting for plumbing. It's a recessed fitting, and inside there is a push button. So those push buttons operate the main line tracks. I guess you can see that now, right? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So those push buttons operate the mainline tracks. So this one right here is actually for a turnout that's way up out of the picture view. This one right here would be for there's a turnout right here to the right. These over here on the left will operate these mainline and siding turnouts. But all these other turnouts on this ladder, for instance, and back in here, those are finger flick. So I think that maybe answers Rod's question. So if you got some more questions, I'll leave this up for a minute.
But you've got all the turnouts tied to JMI, right, Chuck, now?
Yeah, so there's three ways to operate the mainline turnouts that are electric. You can do them with the push buttons. You could do them with your throttle, or you can do it through a JMRI panel. And I might mention that, let's see here. I guess I can't mention it because I don't have a picture like that. Some of my railroad has peninsulas, so you can stand on both sides, or you could be on both sides of the peninsula. So a lot of the push buttons are duplicated on both sides. So if you need to run a train through a crossover, for instance, that button, that push button is on both sides of the peninsula, and they're all labeled. That's what these black labels and these white labels are: milepost markers and turnout or switch numbers. So, and then again, all that information is on this piece of paper right here. So if you take and look at this, the turnouts that are manual, I believe they're indicated in a brown color, and the turnouts that are electric, I think they're indicated in a yellow color, if I recall. But and then, as long as we're talking about this, I should say that on the back side of this thing that's hanging here is all the instructions on how to operate this yard for the yard master, for Provo Yard, for instance. So if he pulls this off and takes a look at it, he not only sees his yard diagram, where to put trains and that kind of stuff, but he flips that over and that's where his instructions are on how to operate this yard, how to do the way bills, where to put trains, what time to put locomotives on the trains. All that stuff is on the instruction sheet for this yard operator. And all the yards have an instruction sheet like this, hanging in front of their yard. So any other questions? Someday I ought to do an op session Zoom meeting. Maybe you'd be interested in that. I don't know. So, but for the guys that have not done or have not built their railroads yet, you might get, this might be useful information, and John will show you some additional types of staging yards in a moment or two. And I think, what, Greg, we got 2 or 3 other people coming up next week that will show even different types of yards. I think that Ron will.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Ron's
Ron will have something
getting
different for us
organized.
next week.
So thanks, Chuck. And John, you want to continue?
Okay, I'd be more than happy to. My name is John Hansky for Ron Christensen, so because he doesn't remember it. It's a good Irish name. It's actually Russian. My father was born Hans Teskovich, and when he went into the military in World War II, he walked up and said Hans Teskovich, and the guy said, "Well, I don't have enough letters on my form for that name," so that's how we all became Hanskys, and it's hard to pronounce. But okay, some overview of staging. This is the first thing I look at when I start to restage. This is my timetable. There's 47 trains on the timetable.
I'm on mute, so thank you.
I'm laughing at them.
And we will normally run 3 or 4 extras. So that's the first thing you have to look at when you're staging. I'm going to start my screen sharing. Okay, we there, Greg?
Yep, you're good. You might want to hit the present button so we see the full screen, but we're seeing it.
Where's that one at?
It's
Present.
down in the lower right, that little easel looking thing down there. Keep going down to the left a little. There you go. Right there.
Okay. So how do I forward then? Just hit.
Your arrow. You can use your arrow, or if you look on the left, there's navigation that shows up.
Okay. All right, this is actually from the play As You Like It from Shakespeare. All the world's a stage and men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his act being 7 ages. Okay, wait a minute. It's going a little bit too quick here. Well, Greg, now I'm really in trouble.
Hit escape. There you go. Perfect.
Let me try zooming.
Now, you don't want to zoom. What are you trying to do?
Well, I like to have the that one again. Okay. How's that?
That's good.
Okay. When I looked at the type of quantity of staging I wanted for the BS line, I was sitting in my basement of this house. In 2008, I was looking at houses and I went right downstairs. The house had a central staircase and 2 windows and a closet. I thought, well, that's it. So I bought the house. I wanted a basement full of trains. I knew I was going to do the Burlington Northern. I thought maybe I would do the Inland Empire route with the Kitty Wide. I thought, well, that's been done. So I thought I would do the Siskiyou line. Now it's been done a lot. Bruce Chubb did it. Joe Fugate did it. I didn't realize that they had already done it basically to perfection, but I thought I could make it interesting. I also wanted to show part of the Cascade Cutoff. Now the Siskiyou line from Northern California up through Oregon has, I think, 33 complete circles of track. So it's very model railroad friendly. But the Southern Pacific didn't like it very much. They made the Cascade Cutoff, which cut off a lot of track. So I wanted that in there too. I thought, well, I'll show that as staging. I've got a branch to Coos Bay, Oregon that is represented with staging. Another interest I had was Union Pacific on the south side of Columbia River. Union Pacific trains stay on the south side and they'll be represented by staging eventually. Another interest was the SPNS. This is co-owned by the Great Northern and Northern Pacific. The Burlington Southern, my railroad, is co-owned by the Great Northern, basically the Burlington Northern, and the Southern Pacific. So to do all these railroads at once, it basically says you need some staging. Well, all this traffic that was being developed basically went to Spokane on the east-west route, and it wasn't big enough. And we'll talk about that. And for those of you who are not familiar with my railroad, I think I have to do a presentation on the railroad sometime. I really liked Chuck's. He was showing a lot of his railroad in his yards and such. But the emphasis here tonight is going to be on staging. The Los Angeles Sacramento staging yard is an 8-track yard with a reverse loop. It's not a reverse loop staging. It's just stub end staging, and there's a loop next to it. And having that reverse loop right there, reversing loop, makes it easier to turn trains around. The reverse loop is operated during the session with a cold drag that runs from Idaho and comes all the way down and comes through the whole railroad and goes to LA for export coal. And then it comes back out empty and goes the entire route again. So it travels from staging to staging. The loop, all the way to the right here, you see a little re-railer going off to the right, and then the second track That the one that way to the right's 230, the 231, 232. 230 and 232 make up a reversing loop. So all the trains that go into this staging yard during a session, I just back out, run them around the loop, then back them back in. And as I back them back in, I will reblock them. I will flip the waybills, see what needs to go where, and do a little switching possibly. The Southern or the Northern Pacific SDs right here on track 233 that represents the Salad Bowl Express. That is through staging. That is continuous loop staging, I guess, as Chuck outlined it. It comes out, goes through Dunsmore, goes through Weed, goes through Ashland, hits the Medford cutoff, disappears off the railroad, and comes right back where it started from. That's a real easy train to restage because he just goes in a big circle. The beauty of a continuous loop staging is that you can have that thing running when you have visitors. You can just, let it go through, and there's a train running for people to look at. The passenger train in the back is the Shasta Daylight. I run trains, and these numbers are not correct, but I run trains 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they run from the cutoff back to that track 238. Normal trains through trains are about 20 cars. Locals, I try to limit to 15. It just makes it easier. But the trains that are sitting on track 234 with the caboose right next to us, 235, 6, 7, those are just backed out, like I said, run around the loop and put back in. Now, without that loop, what I would have to do is run them. It's only 3 feet to Dunsmore, but I would have to back them out into that yard, play around with them, swap the car carts around, swap the caboose, swap the engine around, and having that loop just makes things a lot easier. Okay, the cascade cutoff is what a lot of people think of when they think of staging, where you've got an engine waiting in the wings or a train waiting in the wings, and it leaves its track and goes out and does its business, and then something else comes in and takes up that track. One of my tracks is just a stub end track for staging. So there's 2 trains right there. The other one is the actual cascade cutoff, which runs from Dunsmore to Springfield. If I find that things are going too well, I can bring a train out of that staging and just have the guy at Dunsmore just really be upset with me. This area here, from the right, that elevated area over to the backdrop, will have a foam mountain. The whole railroad's foam, but it'll have a removable foam mountain put on top of it. But in the meantime, there it sits. This is ready to come out. There's the train on the empty track is already gone. That's the one that you're looking at over in Los Angeles staging. And another train will come in, and here it is. It's come in, and that train that we were just looking at that was on the actual cutoff is now gone. Coos Bay branch is basically the same. It's a stub end staging. I've got a position for a Union Pacific operator. This is or 2. Sometimes it takes 2 guys to run that. They can come out of Winchester, which I'll show you soon. They can come out of Winchester and go to Springfield, Eugene, and Albany and do their thing. They're basically on their own for most of the railroad. for most of the operating session. There is one train that they run. It's called the PUP, which is the Portland Union Pacific train. And there was some nomenclature like that in the real world. It was never officially the PUP, but a bunch of the railroaders there would call it a PUP, and it was a transfer. But the Coos Bay branch right there that is being shown is nice and simple, goes into a tunnel. And it's normally filled up with 2 trains. Right now, there's one being pulled out. And I see right now, excuse me, see right now that I got to finish the building. That's just a temporary building anyway, but I could at least put the caps on top of the cornerstones there. Okay, Winchester, that features open staging. The cars are right there, and I'll show you the next slide here. Cars delivered from the Coos Bay local have their way bills advanced and blocked in order of destination to help out the next local. This is the PUP. Behind the caboose is the rest of the world, which I don't show. But the PUP comes out, he goes up to Portland with these big E8s. He'll pick up a few cars, drop off a few cars, drop off his engines and change over to some Jeeps and work Tacoma. It's another part of the yard. It's actually in Seattle staging, but the Tacoma Milwaukee Road guy helps him up in Tacoma, and they work it together. And then he comes back through Portland, drops off anything from Portland area and the Burlington Southern, and then he continues on with the E8s. He gets those back, comes back down, goes on the same track. This is Winchester. You can see the industrial park Ron Christensen likes to operate. This is not in yet, but it's been planned for forever. And I apparently have to look at, has not yet warranted. I don't know what that word is. It's not in yet. It's going to be a double track stub yard. So when you're planning your railroads, you can plan ahead. I mean, it's been what, 13 years I've been planning this thing, and I haven't got it in yet because there's other things that have taken precedence. Okay, Spokane staging. Spokane staging has always been a problem. It was originally 6 tracks. 3 of them could take, 2 or 3 of them could take 15-car trains. It was hard to get to. It was hard to see the trains. The idea was you pull the trains out of the staging. It was not quite hidden, but it was pretty high up. You pull the trains out of here, and then you go to Pasco to do your brake test to make sure your waybills match your cars. It's now, that's gone. It's now 4 tracks wide, about 6 feet 6 inches around the ceiling. There's signals being installed and cameras being installed, and to get to it, you take a step or 2 up the stairs. But basically, you won't need to get to it. You just follow the signals. Most of the signals when you enter, the dispatcher will tell you which track you're going on, and that doesn't even matter because you just follow the signals. And only the signal for your track will be lighted. It'll be yellow. And then the last one will be blinking red, which means slow down, being prepared to stop. And then when you get to the place where the dispatcher has asked you to be, you get a red signal and you stop. The whole railroad's operated by JMRI through a computer, by the way. There's a reverse loop makes the turning of the trains pretty much automatic. The reblocking, most of the trains that go to Spokane or will be going to Spokane will be coming from a certain area. So it's, they're coming from the Dunsmore area. You don't really have to do any big reblock. You just flip the car cards. This is Spokane staging. That's how high it is. That's my rusty old bar that's keeping the house up. Hopefully it is strong enough. Joe Berger, Dick Berry, and Mike Martin came over and helped me on this. There's LED lighting up there so you don't get burned. But trains will just be sitting there ready to go. The car card boxes will be on the side of the steps. And when you get called, you walk up to the dispatcher and say, I'm called for the Spokane to Portland 1. He knows what train or what track that's on his computer. He lines up the switches and you go. I've got a rule in my layout, out of staging, you don't have to check the car cards usually. If they're wrong, the yard will find it, and it's my fault. But I see people, some of my staging is in hard to reach areas and people are kneeling. Like this one, it's going to be hard to see the actual number on the car. Just go on that one, you just go by blind faith that it's going to be right. And if it's wrong, then the Portland or the Dunsmore yard masters will yell at me. Like I said, we're trying to move 47 trains and not, a lot of times I've talked to some engineers, they don't walk their train and make sure every single card is right. Every single car is correct. They say, take this train to Fostoria. Well, off he goes. So I think it's realistic enough to do that. Okay. When you're working on the paperwork involved here, like what Chuck says, Chuck's cheating. He's got his operators doing the restaging for him. I get out the timetable, see which trains have been run or ran. And it takes me about 3 hours to restage. A checklist helps me keep it, so I don't lose my sanity or my voice, apparently. Excuse me. Basically what I do on this, what I do when I restage is I move those trains pretty fast when I'm backing them out of Los Angeles and Coos Bay. I back them up pretty quick. And if they derail or something, I'll try backing them slower. If they still derail, I'll check the cars or the track or whatever. But I know if I back them up fast and restage quickly, they should work. They should work okay for a normal operation. It's also a great way of tuning up your cars, making sure everything runs right. There's well over 600 cars on the layout at any time. And sometimes the maintenance, things break during an operating session. Sometimes the maintenance has to be kept on top of, otherwise I'll lose it. It also reveals which operator follows the instructions for a train. I did go into details as Chuck did, but all the trains have operating instructions. Most of them are pretty self-evident. If it's a local, switch this town, don't switch all the other towns, switch this town. And if it's going to staging like this, coming out of another yard, it's usually not too complicated. But it does reveal some problems where maybe the yard master didn't do it right. And most of the time it's my instructions weren't good enough. So I'll improve the instructions. And again, you can remove or improve the, oh, there you go. Again, you can improve the cars. Well, that was a quick and dirty little spiel about staging. Any questions? Either I did it perfectly or you're all asleep.
No, nice job, John. Thank you. Thanks, Chuck.
You're welcome.
That was a good start on this. It's an interesting topic, and of course, you can hardly talk about staging without talking about operations and how your layout's organized and all that. So it gets very involved. But that was a good job.
The other thing is that you put it out on the YouTube so that if you miss something, you can relook at it there.
Yep. Yeah, this will be out on YouTube probably sometime tomorrow. So
It looks like an
Nice.
hour's worth is probably enough for a night.
Nice work. Nice work. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank
Yeah, thanks both guys.
You're welcome.
I don't know if anybody's interested or close enough. I will probably resume operating in July. So if you want to, I guess my email is on the crew call here for the Zoom. So if you're interested, let me know. I am. It caused some controversy, believe it or not. I'm asking for a picture of your COVID card, mainly because we got a lot of guys that are older and, we're all susceptible. And I'm just trying to keep all my guys safe. So,
I've got my card. I don't have to come all the way to the West Coast for this, do I?
no, it's Syracuse, Indiana.
Looks like it's a long way out to the West Coast for your layout.
Well, the railroad is in Oregon, but the layout is
I
in
noticed.
Syracuse. Yeah.
Okay.
Where are you at, Jim? You're in Iowa, aren't you?
No, I'm up near Ron Christensen.
Oh, okay.
In,
Marion Springs.
I'm in Berrien Springs, Michigan.
I'll have Ron bring you down sometime.
There's
Right.
a couple on here that's from Michigan.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
could
we
take
got-
the car ferry over.
there you go.
Got
That's a
Got Bob,
Wisconsin.
Blake, and Rod Thompson, and who else is from Michigan? That's besides Chuck.
Jerry.
Jerry, yeah, Jerry.
Well, I do have a
So-
car ferry on the layout up in Tacoma, but I don't think goes to Michigan.
No, I think
That's
we got Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Indiana, but I think we skipped Illinois somehow.
No, you get one from Illinois.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yay, There we go.
Hey.
That's, that's my old stomping ground, but.
We got one from Germany.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got one from
Middle of the
Germany,
night
but-
for him.
Yeah, he wants us to reschedule. We gotta do it at 10 in the morning for him to get on.
I'm not sure there isn't something from the East Coast too, but he's not on the Zoom. But
Well, we got Lester's on here a lot from
Minnesota.
Minnesota, and then Jared is in Atlanta, isn't he?
In Georgia.
He's in Georgia somewhere, yeah. So
All
very
right, well-
diverse group.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks.
See y'all.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah,
for
thank-
doing this.
Yeah, thanks for letting me present.
Yeah, good job. Thanks, everybody.
We
We'll
know-
we'll see you next week.
Wait a minute. Do we
Thanks,
know
Chuck and
if
John.
Jason is available?
What's that?
Do we know if Jason is well enough to do his thing he was
I don't know.
going
He
to?
was on here for a minute, but I think he's already dropped off.
Maybe Clark knows. Maybe Clark dropped off already. Well, we'll check on it.
Okay.
If it isn't
Okay.
Jason, it'll be more on staging next week.
Be careful how you say that. They'll think you're talking about my layout. That's more on staging.
Wow.
Oh. Okay. Right on.
Thanks, guys. Very enjoyable.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Thanks, gentlemen.
See y'all